Hello and welcome. My name is Ramsey Stimson. We're here at the MFAT Academy, which is Maryland Firearms and Tactical Training's studio in Essex, Maryland. And today we're going to be discussing the topic of getting started in metallic cartridge reloading. There's a lot that can be considered prior to even going out and buying your first piece of equipment, and we want to talk about that. We're not going to be actually handling any equipment. We're not going to be reloading any cartridges in today's session. We're just going to be talking about getting started and what are the considerations that you need to consider before you even spend a dollar. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. We'll talk about beginner advice first, and that's, first of all, don't buy a starter kit. I don't recommend the starter kits. They do have good equipment in them, but that equipment often includes items that you either aren't going to find that useful, that aren't as good as what you're ultimately going to want, or perhaps are of no application to what you really want to accomplish. So let's talk about purchasing the components and the equipment that you need and purchasing it so that you don't have to buy it twice. It's always more expensive if we have to buy it twice. We want to take a class or study first also. You don't want to just jump into it blind. This is not a topic upon which you can be successful at without some study and or some training. So I highly suggest if you can take a class. It's a lot of opportunities to do that through local clubs or the NRA and training centers like here at MFAT Academy. So consider that when you think about getting started. Next thing is I would invest in at least 3 reloading manuals. One would be a manual that's written by the manufacturer of the bullets that you want to reload. The other is going to be a manual that's written by the manufacturer of some type of reloading equipment, where they go through the A to Z of reloading, as well as the different types of equipments and their uses and how to function them properly. The third I would recommend would be an independent one, a source of general information about reloading, to include reloading recipes, not for a specific manufacturer of bullets, but a variety of bullets for different types of cartridges, that would also have the A to Z's and probably some historical references as well for you to be able to lean on. The Lyman manual on reloading is an excellent one. I have several copies. It's what I started with back in the 70s and still have kept up to date on their manuals as they have improved and rewritten or edited them. So a good manual is an absolute must. My next piece of advice is going to be, don't start out trying to reinvent the wheel. I see a lot of that where people get into it and they automatically think that because I've read the book, I now can engineer around no one's ever thought of, or exceed the safety limits in ways that no one has probably ever thought of or attempted to, and it's just not necessarily true. Engineering a brand new cartridge that no one's ever thought of, or improving upon a cartridge that's been in existence for years, takes some work. And I would highly suggest that you start out by learning the basics and then expanding upon that experience. Ultimately, someday you might find yourself in a position to reinvent or invent something that none of us have come across before or attempted before. But it's not where I would start. Beginning needs. What does the beginner need? Let's start with, of course, a press. That's where we mount our dies. That's where we produce our ammunition. Although there are different types of presses, we'll get into that in a little bit here. A bench or a stand upon which to mount the press and do our reloading, an absolute necessity. Dies that are appropriate for the cartridge that I'm looking to reload. So that, again, an absolute necessity. At least one good manual, 2 or 3 is better, as we've already discussed. A scale to weigh your components on. A digital scale I find to be easier to use, quicker to use, and reliable. A good digital scale is all of those things, where some of your balance scales, especially the inexpensive ones, are rarely any of that. They're hard to use, they're slow to use, and some of them are just not very accurate. So although it seems like the balance beam would be the most accurate way to go, you're going to have to spend a lot of money to get one that's that good, and for most of us, the accuracy that we need to be able to load to, you don't need that kind of accuracy. Calipers, and here again I'm recommending digital calipers, because the digital calipers are as accurate as 98% of us need them to be. They're quick and easy to use and set and reset and to calibrate. Whereas your dial calipers, not quite as easy, and the degree of accuracy between which you can discern with the human eye is not that great for most of us. However, some folks feel like that's their choice. I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong, but at least have a set of calipers that you can measure your components and your results with, so that they're reproducible. A case cleaner of some kind, whether it's a dry media vibratory type cleaner or a tumbler that uses steel pens and wet solutions, or a ultrasonic, which is the thing that a lot of folks want to use today. Extremely good, but with the wet and the ultrasonic type cleaners, you do have to dry your cartridges, which can add, some time into your case prep time that perhaps you don't want to invest, or perhaps you do. Entirely, again, up to you. Case lube and a case lube pad. I find most useful. The spray lubes I do use on certain cartridges, but I think you're going to find that there are some cartridges out there that just a case lube pad with case lube on it is going to be your best choice. The primer pocket reamer and the case neck reamer or primer pocket brushes, both necessary for your case prep. And those are steps that I wouldn't recommend skipping at all. The priming tool, whether it's press mounted or bench mounted or handheld, entirely up to you. I find the press mounted ones to be very useful for the presses that I use and reliable, but you do need something to prime your brass with and not handle your primers by hand. A cartridge appropriate case gauge, the Wilson and Lee gauges I find to be some of the best out there for the money, and highly accurate, affordable, and available. A reloading block or tray is something that helps you stay organized and keeps you from tipping over your cases, unless you're using a progressive where you have a case feeder and you don't need to handle your cartridges between steps. That block or tray is going to come in very, very handy. Cartridge appropriate storage boxes is an absolute must to keep your ammunition organized, to be able to mark it properly, and to keep it safe and in good condition. I highly recommend those things. Next, we want to talk about our space considerations. Do we have room for a bench or not? How big of a bench do we want? Do we just want to use a reloading stand, set it up wherever and whenever we need it, and be able to put it out of the way? There are alternatives. Again, we talked about hand eyes before, where you can use pretty much any flat surface as long as you can protect it so that you're not damaging it. The kitchen table is not a good alternative unless you have a very understanding spouse or significant other, or if you have an old table, you don't mind putting some dense things and that sort of thing. And so those are the considerations. Think about the amount of space you're going to need and occupy and use. Then we want to look at what kind of press do we want to use. So the hand eyes don't require a specific press. Again, just a surface that you can use reliably. And that's where I actually started in 1977, 1978. And I think it's a good choice for someone who doesn't want to spend a lot of money, doesn't have a lot of space. But then going to a hand press. Hand presses are nice and portable. The hand presses you can use at the range when you're trying to work up a load and you're trying different little changes, either in seating depth or the amount of crimp you use or the amount of powder that you use in small increments without having to do all your loads at home and then take them to the range and shoot them. Or if you're having to load on the go somewhere, if you're at a competition or something like that, or hunting and want to be able to have the ability to load ammunition far from home, these are an option that a lot of us can use. Then looking on top of that is going to be your single stage press. The single stage presses are where I advise most people to start, unless you want to go to a turret press, which we'll talk about in a minute. But no matter what kind of loading you do, I think you'll find at some point in time a single stage press is going to be necessary, or at least come in very handy. So this is a good choice for most of the beginners out there to get a good single stage press. Beyond that, the manual indexing turret press is going to be a good choice. They're very stable. You can buy turrets. You can set up a number of dies, as you can see in this illustration, for multiple calibers if you want, and so that you don't have to remove them from the press, and that gives you a lot of versatility there. The next thing that we'll look at is going to be what we refer to as a self-indexing turret press. This is where I do most of my reloading, because I have turret plates for every cartridge that I reload. I can take that turret plate out and change the cartridge that I'm loading rather quickly, and it's convenient and not as expensive, I should say, as the progressive type presses. I can take the indexing rod out of this particular style one by Lee, the classic turret press, and change it from being a self-indexing turret press to being a single stage by rotating the turret manually from step to step, and that can be handy at times as well. Then we'll look at the manual indexing progressives, where you use a tool head to set up all your dies and everything, and the tool heads are interchangeable. You can take that tool head out and drop another preset tool head, including with your powder drop and all that, and changing calibers rather quickly. But this can add a little bit of expense. The self-indexing type press requires that you index it manually, rotating by hand, but again, once you have indexed through your first cartridge, every time you put a new piece of brass in and pull the handle, you're producing a new finished cartridge. So this can speed up your loading, and they're quite accurate and affordable to an extent without getting into a self-indexing progressive, which obviously is our next choice, which is a Dillon Super 1050. It's got 8 stations. It comes with a case feeder. You can add a bullet feeder on top of that as well, and it'll produce in excess of 1,000 rounds when fully set up. And if you want to, you can put a motor on it so it runs automatically without you having to pull a lever, and really knock out a lot of rounds. I ran one of these presses when I shot competitively, and it was a pleasure to run. But you need to be mechanically inclined a little bit, and you need to already know what you're doing before you jump into a press like this. Otherwise, it could be a nightmare. It could be a dream. It could be a nightmare. So start simple and work your way up is my advice when it comes to that. Then we'll talk about our different types of dies. The steel dies are the most basic, and they're the useful ones as far as most of us are concerned. There are some other types of dies that other reloaders are going to get into, but this is probably where you're going to start, or with the carbide dies. The carbide dies typically are for your straight wall cartridge or your handgun or pistol cartridges. There are some for rifle cartridges out there as well, but the unique part about the carbide dies is that you don't have to lube your cases in order to run them. The carbide dies will take care of the resizing without needing lube. But there are some restrictions in their use in that respect as well. The full-length sizing dies for your rifle cartridges are handy if you are going to be loading brass that was fired in a different firearm than it's going to be fired in next, or if you want to fully recondition a case versus the neck sizing dies. The neck sizing dies reduce the amount of wear on the brass and the fatigue of the brass because it's only resizing the neck of the cartridge. But that is most handy only in cartridges that are going to be fired in the same firearm that they were fired originally. And that's not always the case for a lot of your reloaders. The competition dies are out there and they're excellent. They can be a little bit complicated, and for most of us, if you're not shooting competition or you're just not an absolute accuracy freak that just is so super meticulous about every round being so precise, you know, for most of us that are hunters, plinkers, or your average competition shooters that are just looking to produce a large volume of ammunition, the competition dies aren't necessary. And then on top of that, there are some specialty dies. And I have a few that were designed for cowboy action shooting, which is what I did for loading lead rounds for specific calibers, where the resizing of the brass was particular and different than that for jacketed ammunition. So you'll find some specialty dies out there that will work to your advantage and are useful to own and use as well. Then on top of all of that, we need to look at whether we want to start with the hand dice and load on a flat surface, or do we want to start with our rifle, especially the 2 die sets. 2 die sets are going to have the resizing and decapping die, and then the bullet seating and crimping die. And that's where a lot of folks start when it comes to rifle. The 3 die sets for rifle can also have a factory crimp die in them, but then the 3 die sets for handguns, pistol cartridges, they're going to have not only the resizing and decapping die, the case mouth expanding die for you to be able to drop your powder in and then seat a bullet without damaging the brass, absolutely necessary. The bullet seating and crimping die, again, your 3rd die in that 3 die set. So those 3 dies again can change from manufacturer to manufacturer and from pistol to rifle. The 4 die sets typically have the resizing and decapping die, going to have your case mouth expanding die again, and then a bullet seating and crimping die, and then the separate factory crimp die. So you can look at these different types of die sets and decide what's best for the type of reloading you're doing, and you may want to own different types of die sets for each caliber. You may have more than one, depending again on the type and volume of loading and what your goals for accuracy or repeatability are in respect to the cartridge that you're loading. Then we can go with our primer handling as another consideration, whether we're going to be hand priming, whether we're going to be bench priming with a tool on the bench, or whether we're going to be priming on the press. I find that priming on the press with the types of presses that I use to be extremely useful and accurate and repetitive and convenient. Some folks prefer to hand prime all their cartridges with a hand primer tool. They feel that that's the best way for them to get consistency and accuracy, and I'll leave that up to you to decide. But the hand priming can slow you down a little bit. On top of that, we can look at our powder handling and whether or not we want to start with just scoops, which are volumetric in nature and reasonably accurate. We can go from our scoops to our volumetric powder drops, which are relatively accurate and repeatable as well, and convenient. And I use all of these methods that we're talking about as far as handling powder, depending on what my goals are, the volume I'm going to be doing, and what I'm loading for. The powder scales. Now, some folks will insist on using the balance beam type powder scales. And I started there, as most people do, but I found them to be cumbersome. The cheap ones aren't terribly accurate or easy to keep in check so that they don't get inaccurate, and they slow me down. Whereas I find that the electronic scales are repeatable, they're accurate, they're not terribly expensive, they're quick and easy to set up, and if you have to reset one, it only takes a few seconds to reset one. Then there's also the electronic powder dispensers. The electronic powder dispensers out there today are very good. Some are a little cumbersome or have some quirks, so you might want to do a little bit of research. You can find them at fairly reasonable prices, under $200, upwards of over $600 or $800, I believe now. So there's something in there for everybody as far as price range is concerned, I think. Going beyond that, our case prep. Our case cleaners, whether it's a vibratory cleaner or it is a wet tumbler or an ultrasonic cleaner or clean manually. All of these are options out there, again, depending on how much money you want to spend. Again, the vibratory cleaner with the dry media is something I find quick, easy, and useful. I throw my cases in there to be cleaned well ahead of the time to reload so that they're already sorted and ready. Whereas the wet tumblers and ultrasonics can be rather quick, and they produce excellent results, although you do have to dry the cases thoroughly before you can put powder or primer in them. Manual cleaning is a little tedious and expensive though, and if you're not doing a large volume of cases, it's easy and convenient and doesn't require any special equipment other than a case brush and perhaps a primer pocket reamer. Case prep tools that are absolutely vital to every reloader are going to be your case neck reamer. Even for new cases, you're going to need to ream the necks. If you've got damaged cases or that you need to get a little nick out of and that sort of thing, a case reamer is going to be absolutely necessary. And then on top of that, the pocket primer pocket reamer is a must for grungy cases. So you want to get that junk out of there so that your primers are reliable. Beyond that, we need to talk about the tools. The proper tools are absolutely necessary for our reloading work, and we'll start with calipers. Every bench should have a good set of calipers on it, whether you choose the dial calipers or the digital calipers, entirely up to you. I prefer the digital. They're easier, quick, accurate to the degree that I need and am capable of doing on my own personal level. Case lube, again, if you are going to lube it all, a lube pad and lube is going to be the answer to most of your problems as far as lube is concerned. Spray lube works, however, some cartridges are a little bit finicky, so I use both. There's tub lubes where you can dip your cartridges in that, and those are very good as well. I have that. I use all three, but primarily for rifle cartridges, I'm going to use the lube pad and lube. For straight wall cartridges that just need a little bit of lube, like pistol cartridges, typically it's going to be a spray lube if I use any lube at all. Powder funnel, if you use through powder charging dies, then a good powder funnel that fits the die, like the Lee funnel and the Lee dies, absolutely essential. But you're going to find use for a powder funnel of one kind or another. Case gauges, again, what brand you choose is up to you, but a good case gauge for the cartridge you're loading is essential to ensuring that it's going to chamber and function properly. A stuck case remover, you're going to need one sooner or later, and if you wait until you have a stuck case to buy one, you're going to stop what you're doing. If you try and extract a case without a good stuck case remover, you take a chance of damaging the die and frustrating the heck out of yourself to start with. So I highly recommend you go ahead and buy one and have it on your bench ready for when you do have a stuck case. Good eye and ear protection is non-negotiable. You want to protect your eyes, you want to protect your ears. You're not getting any more unless you're wealthy, extremely well insured, or extremely lucky, or all three. So protect your eyes and ears with good ear protection and with good eye protection, and anyone else that's in close vicinity who's working with you at the bench has to have good eye and ear protection. Don't even think about it, just do it. A good bullet puller, either the kinetic energy bullet puller, it looks like kind of like a hammer, or the press mounted ones, depends. I have both. If I'm only going to have to unload one or two cartridges or even a handful, the kinetic energy bullet puller is sufficient. But if you make a mistake on 50 or even 150 cartridges and you have to unload all of them, that kinetic energy bullet puller is not going to be a whole lot of fun. So I highly recommend that you consider, if you're going to do any kind of serious production, all above 10 rounds at a time, that you have a good press-mounted bullet puller. They're not cost prohibitive, and they do come in extremely handy. Going beyond that, it would be final thoughts here. Always follow the standard safety protocols. Never exceed the recommended maximum charges or even the minimum charges for that matter. Make sure that you're adhering to the recipes, cross-reference with the powder manufacturer, with the bullet manufacturer, and with the equipment manufacturer in multiple manuals or even online resources if possible to make sure that you're not going below the minimum or going above the maximum. There are reasons why those measures are there, and those folks that produce that information work very hard at making sure that their information is good and accurate. And I've even found at times that the maximum recommended charge was far too much, that for a particular cartridge, for a particular firearm that I was loading, I hadn't reached the maximum charge recommended yet, and I was already seeing signs of overpressure. So you need to start well below the maximum and work your way up. Don't start at the maximum. It doesn't always go well when you do that. You want to store your components. Always store those components according to the manufacturer's recommendations. They know their product, and they have done an awful lot of research to ensure that they're giving you good information on how to properly store it, not only so that it stays good and stays usable, but that it stays safe. Remove all distractions from your workspace when you're loading. Don't watch television. If you've got the radio on, it needs to be low. It needs to be background noise. It doesn't need to be something you're listening to, per se, because that can distract you. Conversations with other people, if there are other people in the room, you need to make sure that between each step while you're loading, you take the time to make sure you're focused on that step and not distracted by the other individual. If you get distracted, what do? You stop what you're doing, disassemble that cartridge or dispose of it properly. Don't just guess as to whether or not it's safe to use, because it might not be. And if you've double charged a case or you have failed to charge a case, you can create some very unsafe conditions. Anything from a squib load that blocks your barrel to overcharges that could blow the gun up in your hand. And remember, your hand and your face are right there, and people that are standing next to you are vulnerable to that as well. So don't do it. Stop what you're doing, dispose of or disassemble that cartridge, and then move on. On top of that, we want to give consideration to how we start our journey, and start by trying to duplicate a cartridge that you already know, one that you've purchased, one that you've used before. Try and recreate that one and duplicate the accuracy and the consistency and the velocity that you achieve with the factory ammo. And then work your way from there to other variations if you want, but again, don't reinvent the wheel. Be confident in what you do by using good resources and producing something that you're already familiar with first. Beginners often, this so often I hear about it, I see it on the online forums, they chase these maximum velocities as if it's some sort of a milestone. And they're typically unaware that accuracy and good terminal ballistic performance rarely depends upon maximum velocity. It's kind of like, I've found young guys typically, and some older guys, they want to go on vacation. They want to get from point A to point B absolutely as fast as possible, and they ignore the fact that mom is uncomfortable because she needs to get up and walk around, and the kids need to go to the bathroom, but the focus is on just getting there as fast as possible, as if there's some kind of bragging rights. Maximum velocities in ammunition seems to be a trend with a lot of new loaders and some older ones as well. And what you need to do is decide what your focus is on. Do you want to produce the most accurate round or reliable round, one that you can repeatedly put on target and have that bullet function as designed? You'll typically find that the maximum velocity is rarely the answer to that equation. So stay away from that until you're ready to actually approach that edge of the technology that you're working with. The best tools when you're buying tools are going to be ones that you only have to buy once. A cheap tool, an inexpensive or flimsy tool might fit your budget to start, but you're probably going to have to replace it or buy something better later on down the road. Buy good tools that you can afford and use them properly, and I think you'll find that very satisfactory. And accessories that do not enhance your loading abilities or enjoyment are often a waste of money. I don't know how else to express that other than to say that if you buy something that's gadgety, that doesn't really do something you need it to do, and you put it on your press, and it might slow you down, it might speed you up, but if speed isn't the goal, then what have you really done other than spend money? So think about the accessories that you purchase for your reloading. If you'd like to know more, click on the subscribe button below. Ring that notification bell so that you're going to get notifications. You can always reach out to us. You can put comments in the comments below. You can reach out to us via email through our website at www.mfatt.com. You can call us at 410-991-0579 and get information or talk to us about classes or even get advice if you like. If we're not able to answer, we will get back to you, I promise. But again, I want to thank you for being here with us today and taking the time to study with us. And don't forget, train to live. It's a worthwhile endeavor. Thanks again.